Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode or Pitch Us, the first one of 2024. Super excited to have everybody here. My name is Tim Cooley. I am the author of the Pitch Deck book. I wrote this book because so many people who go out in funding just don't have all the basics that are in the pitch. And so it's why I do this. I love helping people pitch better. Check out the book. It's got basically everything you need to know. And so with us today is an incredible team. I'll bring them up here. And so why don't you guys share your screen and pitch us?
All right. Hey, thank you, Tim, for having us. My name is Brian Parker, and with me I have Alex Huhn, and we are two of the four founding members of the UAir Mini. The UAir Mini is 100% founder-owned, early-stage drug device combination, and we focus specifically on reinventing the rescue inhaler for modern-day life. So let's get into it. First, the inspiration for the UAir Mini came in large part from my friend Allie. Allie is an event planner in Salt Lake City, Utah, and Allie has asthma. Well, one day she was preparing for a big event that she had, picked up a big, beautiful bouquet, and started to have an allergic reaction to the bouquet as she's driving down the road. In her words, she said, "I reached for my purse to search for my inhaler and realized that I grabbed the wrong one. The purse with my inhaler inside was at home." So literally struggling to breathe, driving down the freeway during rush hour traffic, Allie pulls over and walks up and down the freeway for about 20 minutes, not knowing if her throat was going to completely close off or not. Fortunately, after about 20 minutes, she was able to catch her breath, throw the bouquet out of her car, and continue on her way home. But this begged the question, is Allie the only one that this has happened to? Is her story unique? So we partnered with the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, and we asked inhaler users this very question. And we were surprised to find out that 40% of rescue inhaler users report having an asthma attack at least once per year and not having their inhaler with them. 40% per year, an astronomical number, an astronomical cost, both personally to these individuals and to the healthcare system as a whole. So, of course, the natural next question was, well, why? Why did you not have this life-saving device with you at all times? And what we found is about 79% of the responses were really the same problem. 52% said that they'd forgotten their inhaler. 19% said that they had just a limited number of them, like Allie only had the one in the one purse. And 8% said that they had misplaced or lost their inhaler. So then we asked ourselves, okay, well, what if you did not have to remember your only inhaler because you had a rescue inhaler in every purse, car, backpack, gym bag that you owned? Well, introducing the UAir Mini. The UAir Mini is the first of its kind miniature albuterol rescue inhaler designed to come in a multi-pack of 4 50-puff inhalers. So to make that clear, the standard L-shaped inhaler that we know and love has 200 puffs of medication. What we've done is that with a single prescription, taken those 200 puffs and split them amongst 4 50-puff mini inhalers that are really barely the size of a car key fob, barely bigger than a chapstick, so that you can have it anywhere you need it. But we included the key ring attachment so that if you're leaving the house with your car keys in hand, you literally cannot leave without your inhaler with you. So then we went back to our survey data and said, okay, does this answer the question? And we found that it does. It addresses the 52% that forgot their inhaler and those who only had limited numbers, or if you misplace and lose your inhaler, well, it comes in a 4-pack, you've got 3 more as backups. So we were elated to find out that we have largely solved this problem with a pretty simple innovation. That being said, there were still a couple more questions regarding the UAir Mini that we needed to answer.
So the first big one was, do patients want it, right? So we found the need, but do the people, are the patients going to be receptive? And in our survey of 528 asthmatics, we found that 81% of asthma patients would indeed purchase a UAir Mini. And what was really interesting is there were 44% that said they would buy this instead. They would replace their current L-shaped inhaler with the UR Mini package. But then there was this 37% that said they'd actually buy it in addition to. So they'd grow the pie a little bit. They'd buy a standard 200 puff inhaler, maybe keep it in their medicine cabinet. And then they'd buy the UR Mini in addition to keep in their gym bag and in their purses and their cars. So in the United States, in order to get your hands on an inhaler, you do need a doctor's prescription. So the next question for us is, would doctors prescribe this? And it was a resounding yes. We got 96% of doctors surveyed would prescribe the UR Mini, and 91% believed there was a clear market need. We got a sample from pulmonologists, internal medicine doctors, family medicine doctors, and pediatricians alike. So we got a pretty well-rounded cohort of physicians that would indeed prescribe the UR Mini. So where are we today? We have filed for our United States patent. We have filed for the European patent application. We've developed a custom canister and valve, which we'll see in the next slide. We have a working prototype of our device with HFA propellant. And what we're working through right now is transitioning our prototypes from 3D printed to injection molded. And this will help us with our FDA testing and filing, and then ultimately with our mass manufacturing. So let's take a look at what a UR Mini looks like. We have a mouthpiece, which is identical to the current inhaler. We have a dose counter, just like the current inhaler. There's an actuator on the back, very similar to the current inhaler, and was a key important feature because trying to keep the actuation in a similar place and function was of importance for a life-saving medication. We packaged the whole thing in a horizontal casing and included that keychain ring so that you could attach it to your backpack, your gym bag, your keys. Now, if you look on the right, you'll see the difference in the size of the canister notated with the standard inhaler size canister in the middle, the UR Mini size canister on the right-hand side, and a standard chapstick on the left just for perspective. So you'll see it's about half the size of a chapstick, and in diameter, you can see how much smaller it is from the current inhaler. So what does this look like from a financial opportunity? So there's about 70 million inhalers in the United States prescribed annually, and that's for about 25 million people. So based on our market research, we're estimating that the UR Mini could capture around 31 million of those inhalers, presenting a market opportunity in the billions ultimately. We have positive patient and provider market research. We have an opportunity to differentiate what a rescue inhaler looks like compared to a maintenance inhaler. And our product targets high margin markets such as the United States, Europe, Australia, Mexico, and Brazil. All areas where having the UR Mini would add value and convenience to our patients' lives. So today, we're 100% UR founder owned, and we're seeking a strategic partner to help us bring the UR Mini to market. And so we'll take any questions.
Awesome. Nice job. Really cool presentation. So I like to start these things off with things that I really enjoyed about the presentation. First of all, I like the product. I think the product's really cool. From an investor, everyone can see this. And there's somebody with asthma. This isn't a new thing. So the product's really interesting. The form factor is pretty cool. You guys have a lot of traction data, which is really good. I think I can help there with that. And I really did like the beginning, and I will caution those who listen. A story like that doesn't always work, but you guys told it in a really good way. But I think we can shorten it and make it even better. So anyway, there's some things just completely missing. And so I think I want to touch on those things. So let's go back through this from the very beginning. And I'll just kind of give you guys my thoughts on what you guys can improve on. Okay, so I don't hate having the team in the beginning, but I don't know if it's the best place to put it on the first slide. If you want to talk about the background of the team, which we did not talk about at all, it is good in a medical device conversation to bring the team early on. So I would say the You Wear Many is modernizing this rescue inhaler. Then go into like the team slide, we're MBA PhDs with backgrounds in pulmonology, whatever your story is there. And we do own 100% of this company. So I think I would pull the team into its own slide and give a lot more more detail around the team.
Okay.
Especially in this case, because you guys all look very young. Not a problem, but like when you're talking about an industry like this where are certain paths to executing, a lot of investors want to see some gray hairs on the team. So
Okay.
I would bring in some advisors, especially with is this a class 2? Seems like it might be.
It's a 505(b)(2).
Okay, yeah. So make sure someone who has gone through that entire process on your team is really, really important. So you guys, yeah. So I would just make sure that team slide is up in front. And
so Tim, we have like a full advisor panel. So our advisor slide ends up taking up most of a slide. Would you put the team on one and our advisors on a second, or just try to mix it all try to fit it all into one?
Yeah. So I would do the team on one. And then I'd say here's how I would do this. I'm like, here's us. These are the main 4 people doing these parts of the business. We have an entire advisory team who've taken 30 products to market with $900 billion in exits. And I wouldn't spend any more time on that advisory team unless someone in the audience cares about an individual, right? So I went to the University of Utah. I've worked with a lot of these medical people at the school. And there's certain people at the school that carry a lot of weight in the community of Utah. And so if they were on our team, I would mention them, right? Especially if I'm pitching in Utah. If I'm pitching from Utah and pitching in Michigan, nobody knows who we are. So it doesn't really matter other than the credentialing, right?
Okay.
So that's how I would say that, if that makes sense.
Yep. Thank you.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So again, I love this story. I think you can just shorten it. And you said all the right things. You have a really good sales personality to tell that story. I think you can just shorten it and just get to the point.
Yeah.
And so what I will say, this didn't lead to why the L shape was bad. It just led to why she didn't have another one. Okay. So what I will say is, I think this is something that you probably know but didn't mention is I feel like there's probably a CPT code or something associated with the 200 inhaler, which is why you guys do a 4 inhaler, right?
Precisely. It's exactly why.
Okay. So that's a very important piece of information that wasn't mentioned. So, you guys are all doctors, right? I go get an inhaler. You can either give me 1 or 4 in the same code. That's why you changed it. So you see what I'm saying?
I see.
That's a very important piece of information.
Okay. Even though we haven't, gotten all of Blue Cross and everybody to put it on their formulary just yet, it's okay to say we're operating under the assumption, or not say that, but essentially we are operating under the assumption that it would be billed under the same CPT code.
Right. Yeah, there's already a predicate for this. Okay. If they wanted to a person wanted to buy ours instead, we don't know yet, but they probably won't have to do much different. And now they've gotten 4 versus 1. So we look at the problem statement. That's one problem, right? So I think that's the next point that I want to make is I would go back to the problems with the current offering. And this is one of those problem statements. You go to the doctor, they give you a prescription for one thing, and you can forget it someplace, right? Or we're building one where you get the same prescription and you get 4. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So I would pull out all these problem statements. So I'm going to go all the way to the end here. Easy access to different things like the keychain is actually very, very important. So I would call that out. Like, here's another reason why you can't attach this L thing to something it would hang off your purse, or it doesn't really fit in your pocket very well. It doesn't really fit in a purse well. It's huge. Like, I would start pulling out all these problem statements and why you guys started to build this thing the way that you did.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Then I would say, and again, not your research, I would kind of get rid of the research right now, not completely. We're going to move it. And then you're saying, based off the feedback that we got from a bunch of people, we came up with this design. Right? So go problem right into the solution. Okay. The next thing to do here is go into pricing. So I have no idea how much this costs. I don't know how much it costs you, what you're selling it for, none of that. So I would add that pricing slide. Okay. And then the other one that I would add is the finance slide. So, the first year where I think we're going to do, 200,000 units, blah, 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 whatever your numbers are. And then this is what it looks like over the next 3 to 5 years. And then I really did like this. So this is a good solution slide, right? So keep all your solution slides together. So you're like, hey, so this is what we built. And then, because of building it that way, like look at how it can function in the real world. Whereas the other one can't do that. Okay, so this is your market slide. So you're saying that currently there's 70 million units sold, or is that just 70 million buyers?
No, 70 million units sold.
Okay, and so you think with your device there's going to be 31 million more?
It's supposed to show that it'll capture 40% of the 70 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I would do is, instead of doing a chart like this, is you could just reframe this and say 70 million times the price of the current device. This is how big that market is. And if we can start to replace, half of that market or whatever, then this is what ours would look like. We think that we can own 50% of the market at some point in way down the road. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And yeah. We appreciate your feedback on this slide because it's been iterated a lot and we still aren't actually happy with it. So we appreciate your help.
Yeah. And do pictures. Like you could say, hey, look, bring back the L inhaler. It's a $70 million market, which is this much dollars. Ours at this price, if we got 30 million people, which is half the market, we could be this, which doesn't seem unreasonable based off what the product actually is, right? Right. So again, none of us know, but doesn't seem unreasonable. Okay. So then when you guys put that forecast slide together, right? And this is a little secret, is year 5 has to be some super small percent of the 31 million. So there's no magic number there, but like maybe you're at 2 million people in sales at that point, right? Because then we're like, is that reasonable? We're looking for like, does this make sense mathematically?
Yeah. Follow-up question for you there, Tim, because we do have a 20-year pro forma. And in terms of fitting it into a slide, and shortening it to 5 years, well, actually, I have 2 questions. So let me backtrack. The first question would be, would it be 5 years from profitability or 5 years from now, right? Because, FDA approval is going to take 2 years or so, if we're moving quick. And so then is it 5 years from that standpoint? Or is it 5 years including those 2 years of the FDA?
Yeah, so I would in this case, since you're kind of far out, I would say just give us a 3-year breakdown of when you would start to sell.
Okay.
Because it's going to go 0, 0, 0. That's stupid, right? Like from the time we sell, we think that this was what our projections would look like.
And then do it from 3 to 5 years out from when we start selling.
Yep.
Okay. And then follow-up question. How do you like to see that presented in a slide? More aesthetically pleasing, or just like a screenshot of the Excel pro forma with here's our, expenses and SGA and XYZ?
Yeah. So what I would say is just do a chart that shows the revenue over those 5 years. So really cleanly. And then on the bottom, you can do a really simple chart, like a KPI chart that says, number of units, I know you're not selling to clinics, but for those who are listening, you can do other KPIs that are important to the business. So like if you had downloads or clinics or whatever, that's how you would do that. So in your guys' case, it would be number of units over time. And then mathematically, I can be like, oh, I can see how they went from 100 to 500 to 8,000 over that period of time.
Okay.
So versus just the chart itself. The other thing you can add if you want is like revenue and expenses, and then show kind of a summation in the chart as well. So you can do all those kinds of things. You kind of don't need to per se, but play around with that and see how it feels.
Okay. And then when you say that year 5 should be a small percentage of that 31 million, are you implying that it should be, years 1 through 4 should be a crazy fast ramp up, and then by the time we hit year 5, it's like now we've started to flatten out? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, I would say make it make sense, right? Like, for example, let's say you get to market with this thing. The first year, you're going to have to produce, like, let's say you make them yourselves. You're going to have to do order quantities of like 100,000, right? I'm just making up numbers, but that seems reasonable. So you're like, the first year we think we can sell 80,000 units, retool, do all the things, and then we can get a bulk order, right? So you kind of think about it like what needs to happen. So what needs to happen to get to 2 million in sales, 2 million units? Well, that's not going to happen year 1. I mean, no one knows about you, right? So you just got to think about that logically.
I see. Okay. So
So it's more of a logic game than a.
Can't ramp up too fast or too slow. It's got to make sense.
Yeah. It's got to feel right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So now let's keep it. We're here. So I like to suggest to people to stick. So we went problem, then the solution, which this picture and that other one are pretty good. Making sure you tell the story. Then you went into like the numbers, right? So we said, how much does it cost, the financials, and then the market. I think sticking with those all in a lump, because now we're talking numbers, and then from here, go into like the competition. We know there's like, you just show a quick competition slide, even though there's the L, there's different companies involved in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And we have all that broken down, and okay.
Yeah. So I would go there, and then I would start to go into the traction, which is all these charts and stuff you guys did. So I would do a couple things here. I would speed this up, right? You don't need to spend that much time in this, because you're like, look, we did a lot of work before we even put all this together. We ran a bunch of surveys, close to 800 people were involved in all of our things. Here's what we learned. And you could put this chart, the other 2 charts, probably all on one slide, and then just say, people really want this. And then our next slide is, and doctors want to help us sell it, right? Like, that's a really clean traction, 2 elements, and it took 30 seconds to walk through. And then as I'm listening to you guys, I can read some of this data in the background instead of you having to like read it to me.
Totally.
Does that make sense? So you can pull out some of these bigger numbers, just make it easier. So I would say slide 1 traction, focus on the patient side. Slide 2 would be the doctor slide, kind of like you did with this, but like put it on 2 different slides.
Okay. And for the patient slide, incorporating that pie chart, but in a matching format as 2 things on the patient slide.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. So then again, this is beautiful. This is a great traction part, right? You're talking about what you've done up to today. Then what I would do is kind of mimic this, if you like this format, on what you're going to do over the next however long the funding period is. So if you're raising money for the next 18 months, these are the things that we'll accomplish over that time period. So basically remove this bottom one, put it onto a new slide, and add a couple other major milestones that you plan to accomplish.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, much like the classic timeline, that also projects the future.
Yep. Yeah. So I just say traction is everything cool that's happened up until today. Milestones is everything from today moving forward.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. So we already talked about that. Okay. So here is, you have a choice. So I suggest you guys do your team slide in the beginning. Other people, it makes sense to start putting their team slide now, like at the end of the milestones, because it's like, who's all going to make this happen? You could bring that back as a reminder in the presentation. So you guys could introduce yourselves really quickly and then get into the problem solution. Or you can do like what we talked about, is introduce kind of the entire team and who's behind this whole crazy idea. Or you could say, here's a little bit about us. Here's the rest of the team that's going to make these milestones happen. Does that make sense? So you can play around with those and whatever feels right for the pitch, go with that one. So, and then the final thing here is for your ask. This ask needs to be an entire summary of the presentation, not just this, because I don't know how much you're asking for. So I would say throw your logo back on here, remind people what the product is. You could even put a picture of the product on here because it's pretty small. Then you can do like, we're asking for $500,000. And then you want to put your milestones that you're going to hit. And then what the use of funds are. So, 80% is for products, 6% is this or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And then the final thing here is put your contact information on here as well. And then when you guys actually pitch again, end on your ask slide, because, and I'll show you why. Ask me one question about the company from this slide. Like if this is the only slide you saw. And so if you think about what we just talked about, if you had this entire summary of the company, you could ask 100 questions off of this one slide. And usually the ask slide gets the most airtime.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Makes sense?
Definitely.
Does.
Awesome. Any final questions from you guys?
One question I have, back to just thinking about, it was when you were talking about the team, and you can talk about the team at the beginning or the end, or things like that. Would there be any? I guess my concern would be we hop on to pitch with the group, and they look at our youth full complexion and say like, and immediately write us off. Is there any point or utility in, I don't know, calling out the elephant in the room or anything like that, and saying like, don't let our youth, or anything sway you, anything like that?
No, because your advisory team is going to solve that question, right? So, and a lot of people, I do some work, or I used to do a lot more work with a group from the University of Utah called Bench to Bedside, and it's all students. And so, yeah, and I don't know if you guys are part of that or not, but anyway, so like everyone's a student, and this is a very common thing that's happening. But they are the ones going out to raise funds for this thing, but they have this entire like University of Utah team backing them.
Gotcha. Great.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Totally.
So you're more like the sales guy and the guy pushing it forward, but while you have this entire support team. So that's the difference.
Okay, I've got a quick question on pricing. So when we present pricing, are we just looking at basically a little chart, or it's like, this is what we expect to sell it for, this is what our cost of goods breakdown is,
Yep.
These are our margins? Is that something kind of basic?
Yep, real basic.
Okay.
Follow-up question to that, related to there are really kind of two very viable pathways in the both the pricing strategy as well as the exit or the future of the company. So in terms of breaking down like the price, if each pathway would have kind of a different price, does that do we just pick one and go with it, the more likely, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I'll answer this generally because it fits other businesses as well. If you have two different price points, so let's say there's a direct-to-consumer path, and then there's a through an insurance path. Very common. This is becoming more and more uncommon in medical, right?
Exactly.
You mention both of those, right?
Okay.
And then in your finance slide, you'll do a stacked bar chart, and you'll say, here's where we think our direct-to-consumer is going to look like, and here's our through insurance provider pathway. And you can see both of those as they grow over time. And then same thing, go back to that chart at the bottom. So now you have a KPI for key performance indicator for like the number of units sold to the consumer and the number of sold through the insurance pathway. So it would be like 6, 19, whatever. Kind of get that.
Great. That's exactly the two pathways. One follow-up question to that is regarding the insurance. For a medical device in particular, how do we account for in these projections for, some patients having a copay versus not? I assume it's just going to be whatever the cash pay price would be, but through the insurance. Meaning, if that makes sense, meaning someone's copay might be $20, and that means insurance covered $30. So we say $50 is what it is. Is that how you think that?
So as you guys go through this and you learn from the insurance companies, when you start having these conversations, you'll do an average price. So we all know that, or not all of us, but many of us know that insurance is paid different amounts based off of whatever you can negotiate, right? And so what you'll say is, on average, let's say that our billable is 100, but we're going to receive on average $80 of that 100, no matter who we go through. That's how you would price that.
Okay.
Or that's how you would forecast that.
Best resources to kind of, aggregate that data, what Blue Cross Blue Shield covers versus Aetna versus.
I have no idea. Yeah, no clue. I'm sure someone does. I'm not that guy.
That's okay.
It's okay.
Okay, I've got another question for you. So we're coming in pretty early. Like, we've self-funded everything up until this point.
Okay.
And we're like, our thought is to present a convertible note option at some discount because like we're not at a position to value the company and say it's going to be, I don't know, whatever million for hundreds of thousands for X% of the company. Like, is that does that, I guess in your mind, is that even a viable path? Can we pitch people as a convertible note at some sort of discount rate? Or do we have to be like, this is the money for the equity?
Yeah. So I'm not a lawyer. However, if I was doing it, I would use a convertible note because none of us know the value today.
Yeah. Okay.
Or so there's a convertible note or there's a SAFE agreement. They're very similar. The SAFE is the more common one today. There's different versions of that. There's a pre-money and a post-money. There's lots of articles around this. So one, I would consult a lawyer, but I would look into, most likely the SAFE is post-money SAFE, which is the most common one today. But you can do a convertible note. It really just depends on who you're working with.
Okay.
So the post-money SAFE agreement, are there kind of like industry standards of what the discount is and things like that?
Yeah, you can look them up. Again, like I said, talk to somebody. But Y Combinator is the standard for that documentation. So you can just go download it. Anybody can download it. It's free, and just read it. And then you negotiate the terms, typically with some lead and then everybody else, if they want to get involved, they'll follow whatever the lead does.
Okay.
But you can come up with an idea of 20% discount, $4 million cap, whatever your numbers are. Start with something and then let somebody else change it.
Cool. That sounds really good.
Great.
Yep.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, guys, honestly, this was a great presentation. You have a lot of really cool things in here. Simple things to change. I hope more people watch these things because, like I said, like, you guys just miss stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just happens. There's tons of templates out there, but you guys did a great job. So thanks for being here. And if you guys need help, download the book, read it. It's like $7 on Audible. It's like so cheap. But anyway, thanks again. And if you're looking to raise funding, come on the show. It's free. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody.
Cool. Thank you.